Welcome into Get Me The Brandy. I'm Hailey Hunter alongside Josh Getzoff. And can you believe it? We are just one game away from the Olympic break already as NHL players returning to the Olympics for the first time since, 2014. So a little bit over a decade. So exciting. But with that, Josh, you and I are going to have some time off. So what do you think? You have any plans other than watching all the hockey?
I will be watching all the hockey. I have my USA jersey packed, but I will be going with my family. We're getting into the warm weather down to the Florida Keys for a few days. So really looking forward to that. That's kind of become whether it's bye week or Olympic break or just break in general, whatever this has become mid-season the last handful of years. We've made a trek to go down there, and it's kind of become a tradition. So definitely looking forward to, especially after our weather the last couple weeks in Pittsburgh, getting out of Pittsburgh and getting down there.
I saw that at some point, I think maybe Fort Lauderdale, some area in Florida just got snow. So I'm like, please, please don't be snowing because I'm going down to Amelia Island as well near
Oh,
Jacksonville.
cool.
So let's hope the weather warms up by then. But yeah, not bad watching some hockey in the warm weather. I totally agree with that. Well, back in December, leading up to Christmas, you and I talked so much about just the strong finish the Penguins needed going into this Olympic break. Clearly, they understood the assignment 13 3-3 since that break, moving from seventh all the way to second in the Metro Division standings. I feel like people suddenly have gone from, oh, yeah, the Penguins, they had a really good start. Maybe they got lucky with some of their new guys producing. But now I feel like they've gone from that to, oh, crap, this is actually potentially a top 10 playoff contending team. So, what have you just made of this stretch and kind of what's been behind the success?
Well, I agree with you on that point you just made, and that part to me is gonna be really intriguing to watch post-Olympics because the Penguins haven't had that label on them since day one this year, but now they do, and when you have that, it changes things as far as how opponents prepare for you and how you are expected to perform every single night. So I'm curious to see how they handle that on the other side of the break. But to answer your question, I think it is actually fairly simple when you consider what they've done here over the last month plus, really since that game in Chicago, right? When they came out of the holiday break, they thumped the Blackhawks. And then never really looked back, honestly, with what they've been able to do since. So I look at it that their goaltending has been exceptional. Last two games have been, the last game, I should say, has been a bit of an aberration. I think Stu Skinner, probably by his own admission, right after the game, wanted a couple of those goals by the Islanders back in that overtime loss on the island. But if not for Artie Shilovs the night before, they probably lose by 8 or 9 goals to the Ottawa Senators on Monday night. So I think the goaltending just in general has been really good. The thing that stood out the most to me, aside from the depth production, which is a key to any good hockey team or any playoff team, and the Penguins have had that. But I really have enjoyed how this group defensively, especially the blue liners, have kind of bought into just playing for one another, playing for the system. There hasn't been a weak link out there when they've had some injuries. Chris Letang obviously out right now, so we're getting a longer look at Ilya Solovyov. But before that, Eric Carlson missed 5 games. They went 3-0-2, and Parker Wotherspoon scored in that stretch. Brett Kulak scored in that stretch. Ryan Shea was awesome there. Jack St. Ivany stepped up. So I just think that aspect to me is the biggest thing, because if you were to say in the beginning of the year, what's the weakest part of the Penguins roster, people would probably say their goaltending and their defense. And I would argue that really over this stretch, yes, they've gotten a lot of complimentary scoring, and yes, it's great to see a lot of goals be scored. But the fact that they've prevented so much has been the reason why they've won a lot of games. And to me, that's been the biggest part of the equation.
Yeah, 100%. Hopefully, they can kind of get back to tightening things up defensively for this game coming up against Buffalo. Because as you said, it has been really good as compared to last year. But for those who are bummed right now about them dropping the last 2 games, important to maybe mention that they've got some games in hand. Because when we went to Sweden, there was 2 games in maybe 11 to 13-ish days. So
Yeah.
Islanders, they have 2 games on them, even though they're separated by just a point, as well as 3 games in hand on the Capitals as well. So that's obviously really encouraging. But, when it comes to having this break, Josh, just curious if you think this is a good time when it comes to, as you mentioned, Chris Letang is out for a few weeks. Evgeny Malkin appears to be struggling through a little bit of that shoulder injury, just seems to kind of be wearing on him right now. Maybe this is the right time for the Pens to kind of get healthy again.
Well, I don't disagree, Haley. And I think it's funny too, right? Everything is like game to game with how you feel about things. Because after last week, you're thinking, man, I kind of wish the Olympic break wasn't coming. You know,
I know.
they're just rolling every other day. They're playing, they're winning, they're getting so many guys that are stepping up. And then Chris Letang is hurt on Saturday, or is announced as hurt on Saturday. They drop the next two games, and it's like, you know what? Maybe this Olympic break is coming at the right time for the Penguins. But I do think, in general, I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of rigors this year with how the schedule is condensed, and you hit it on the head. That stretch in Sweden was a lull for the Penguins, but since that stretch, they've been in it, and they're going to pay for that on the other side of this. I think they have 17 games in the month of March. So, you get a
Yeah.
couple games in February that round out this month after the Olympic break, starting with New Jersey on the 26th, but then into March, it's a sprint. And, you just saw the standings right there and how close everything is. And it's gonna be great for us. I mean, from our perspective, doing these games, every game is gonna have added significance and added measure. And I'm really intrigued to see how the Penguins handle this, because I think they've done an unbelievable job so far this year of how they perform, counter to the expectations of how they would perform. But the pedal's going to meet the metal on the other side of this break, and I'll be curious to see how it all goes.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, some more separation in the standings right now, but I do think, as we've seen all season, it's going to remain pretty close between a few of those teams in the Metro. But with that, who do you think's the biggest threat right now? I kind of feel like after watching that Islanders game against the Penguins on Tuesday, that they might be, if they continue to play with kind of that relentless spirit that we saw from them. I think the biggest thing for them is finding different ways to generate offense. If they can do that, that's the team I have my eyes on. But what do you think?
That team scares me because anybody, and too, Haley, you were on the island not too long ago. Like, these matchups, how last night went, that's the Penguins Islanders matchup to a T. The Penguins control
Yeah.
possession. They have the better of the opportunities. They dramatically outshoot New York, but they lose. That's kind of how a lot of those Islanders Penguins games have gone, especially when you think back to some of those playoff matchups, and particularly in 2021, where if you really go back and look at that one, Penguins dominated that series from all the metrics, but the Islanders won the series and advanced, and ultimately came, I think 1 or 2 wins shy of going to the Stanley Cup final that year. So I look at them as being a threat, but I also think that they're probably a team that's going to be in when it's all said and done. If you're talking
Yeah.
about a team that's going to threaten the Penguins in the top three in the Metro, it's crazy to say because when we saw them last, they were floundering, but you can't discount the Columbus Blue Jackets because they have gotten the Rick bonus bump. I think they're 9-1 since he took over. And with the Penguins losing last night, they picked up a point on Pittsburgh. They're staying level with the Islanders, and they are a team to me that has a group that just missed last year and was a really, horrible story with the passing of Johnny Gaudreau, but a real feel good turnaround of them to be able to almost find themselves into the playoffs. And I think they're refinding the tools that got them so close last year, this year, and they have some guys that are feeling better about their game. Their goaltending's been a lot better as well. So they are the team I think that could potentially push for those top three spots, but I don't see Philly doing it. I mean, the Rangers have already thrown the towel in on their season. I think the Devils don't have enough runway in front of them. And the Caps, you saw the game in hand there. It's not necessarily that they're that far back, but if the Penguins take advantage of those games in hand, then they're a mile back. So I just don't think that that's yet the team that I would consider. If I had to pick one, I'd pick the Blue Jackets.
Totally agree. Islanders and Blue Jackets, those are the two that I was kind of going back and forth between. You think back to last spring, I believe the Blue Jackets went on a tear as well. So I wouldn't be
Yep.
surprised to see them do that again in March and April. But we're going to take a quick break. We are so excited to have our friend Joe Brand, the Penguins Radio Network play-by-play announcer, coming on next right after this. On February 26th, join us to celebrate the 15th annual Penguins charity game on SportsNet Pittsburgh and purchase one of our charity bags. With the purchase of a gold bag this year, you are guaranteed to receive an autographed Penguins 2025-26 third jersey by one of the following: Mario Lemieux, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Eric Carlson, Brian Rust, or Ricard Raquel. Plus, you'll receive this custom framed 8x10 plaque honoring every 50 goal scorer in Pittsburgh Penguins history, celebrating one of the franchise's most elite achievements. Proceeds will benefit the Penguins Foundation and the Mario Lemieux Foundation. To see a complete list of the items available in each Penguins charity bag, log on to pittsburghpenguinsfoundation.org/charity game preview or scan the QR code on your screen. Okay, we have been waiting for this. So excited to now welcome in Penguins Radio Network play-by-play announcer Joe Brand to the VOD. Joe, can't wait to hear more about your background growing up in the Chicago suburbs, covering your hometown team in Chicago. But first, just how's Pittsburgh been? You've been here for a year and a half now, right?
Yeah, yeah. Time goes by when you're having fun, and it's been great. For the short answer, it really has. The people are wonderful. I think that's the main thing. Just to be engulfed in this fan base is an absolute treat. Knew so much about the Penguins heading into the job, but then being actually involved in it is quite a unique experience and one I'm very happy and proud to be a part of.
Yeah, it's been cool to watch the last year, Joe, because obviously I knew you in passing when we would come to Chicago and got to do a couple of the pregame interviews with you when you were hosting over there. But I knew also what you were able to do and what you were capable of. So it's been fun to see you settle into that chair on the play-by-play side here with the Penguins. But I'm curious now, like you've been here, like you said, a year and a half. You've kind of called some, I would say, some pretty significant moments in Penguins history in that time. Um, one, did you were you able to really process, or have you been able to process yet the fact that you're seeing these guys, these future Hall of Famers every single night, and that you and I are people that are lucky enough to get to call them every night? And two, have there been any of those moments that have stood out to you the most through this time so far?
For the first part of your question, yes and no, because I kind of enjoy going through the job, going through these big moments, and just focusing on trying to do a good job with them. It's not until afterwards that I really reflect on it. But there are still the pinch me moments. Like it'll be the middle of the second period, you know. 11 minutes left. It could be a dud of a game, and I'm still in the back of my mind thinking, "Wow, I'm really doing this. I'm calling Penguins games. I'm being the bridge from the fans, or rather from the game to the fans, and it's a surreal feeling. It really is." All those years in the minors, you work towards something like this. And there's a big moment when you actually land the job, but then you got to kind of keep reminding yourself throughout it that, you've been working towards something like this for so long. And it's still, I still feel like I'm able to reap the benefits of it. So that's been really, really enjoyable. In terms of significant moments, I mean, that's the cool thing, right, man? Like you just said, we are so lucky to have multiple of them. And this is a year and a half for me on the job. What was it, 8, 9 games in of getting Malkin picks up his 500th career goal. I've made the joke that I feel like that's my baptism into Penguins hockey, and I'm very lucky for that to be that. And then there were just more that year with Crosby reaching 1,600 points and 600 goals. Obviously, the most recent one of Sid passing Mario for most points all time. But I also enjoy the things you can't predict, like the Alex Nedeljkovic goalie goal last year. Hat tricks by Justin Brazeau. The moments that you can't prepare for are almost as fun as the ones you can, because that's what the job is. Not everyone is lucky to have a few weeks or months to prepare for Sidney Crosby reaching the top of a pivotal list in hockey history. But you still have to live up to the moment, and it's just the preparation for that is all fun in itself. But the moments that you can't predict, you kind of just have to rely on your gut and resort to all that preparation to lead to a random moment. So it's the best of both worlds. It really is, because like I said before, I'm still pinching myself every time you get a pass from Malkin to Crosby, or let alone a goal from Sidney Crosby that's assisted by Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. Like that just doesn't happen. So I'm very mindful of that and just trying to enjoy it every step of the way.
Joe, you mentioned the minors, calling games in the minors, and what some people might not know about you is that you're a pretty big baseball guy as well. Can you take us through just what it was like? I know it's a grind calling baseball games in the minors in my home state of Traverse City, Michigan, as well as just outside of Chicago, and just kind of what that was like and how big that was in preparing you for the hockey world and your future careers.
It's funny because a lot of people ask what the difference is between calling a baseball game and calling a hockey game, and it's pretty much everything. It really is. A baseball game is 3.5 hours, and there's probably 11 minutes of action when you dissect it that way. And then for hockey, the whole game, you're telling where the puck is going and where it's coming from and what's going on. So when I first started preparing for hockey, I was preparing the wrong way because I was doing a ton of backstories and all these players and everything. And yes, you need to do that. That's important for calling a hockey game, as Josh clearly knows. But there's not as much time for it, so you have to be more cognizant of when is the right time to drop in a factoid about a player. It's gotta come at a time where the audience will remember it, will absorb it the right way. Baseball, I would put at least three facts for each player, and I knew that wouldn't be enough because you get at least three at bats every game for each guy in the lineup. So I really value my time in the minor leagues calling baseball games. I was in Kane County for 10 years. For people who don't know, that's a suburb outside of Chicago. I was very lucky to live at home and call games on a daily basis. But we did 140 games in a span of 152 days throughout the summer. So I
Wow.
mean, do the math. That's 12 off days.
Did you just sleep
3 days
at the
off in a
baseball
row.
ballpark, or did you ever go home? You just sleep there ever?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much for the most part. In the car a few times. I mean, there were
Okay.
definitely those circumstances. I actually remember we got in late one time, and I slept in the booth and woke up to the sun like shining off the roof of the ballpark into the windows because there were no blinds in the booth. Why would you need them? But yeah, no, tons of stories like that. Long bus rides, long rain delays. But it's part of the journey, and it was something I've just always wanted to do. So I never looked at it that way. I always just looked at it as an opportunity to do what I've wanted to do, what I love to do, and an opportunity to get better at it. And I really appreciate my background in baseball because it made me learn so much about the broadcasting world, and I can still take that into hockey, even though it's a totally different sport. I mean, I called basketball and football, so the fast paced action can translate into a hockey broadcast. I was able to carry that over, but it's a whole nother animal with hockey. I think once I finally got down the nuts and the bolts of that, I was able to take all my other background experience and other skill sets from baseball and other sports and hosting talk shows and reporting and anchoring sports. That's able to translate in a hockey broadcast when there is some downtime because there are those random moments where we're not sure what's going on in the play. You got to fill time, but not you know
Mhm.
turn it into comedy hour either. You have to explain what's going on. So it's just all the little things that I've done along the way I think have helped lead me to this point, and I try to pull back from all those experiences and use it in the right constructive way to calling a hockey game. And it's just the cherry on top to be in the NHL right now with the Pittsburgh Penguins because it's something you envision throughout that whole journey, but you never are quite sure if it's going to happen, if you're going to reach that level. And now being there, I again just try not to diminish it at any level.
One thing that I think is pretty cool, Joe, is you mentioned the broadcasting through the ranks of minor league baseball before getting to the NHL, but this isn't your first dose of NHL action with the headset on doing play by play. I know you did some studio hosting with the Blackhawks, but also called a couple games. So, not to go full Seth Rohrabaugh, but another two-parter for me. Um, first of all,
Two, if I
Is it an
may.
when you
intern, please?
yeah, two if I may, guys, please, two if I may. Joe, first of all, when you were with the Blackhawks, what was that experience like? Kind of immersing yourself with an original six club. Obviously, they had some legends there during your time as well, and you also went through a rough patch in Hawks history, just as far as what the team results were at the time. But then also, I want to hear a little bit about, and I know some of the stories, but maybe for Haley and our listeners out there about how you got your first couple opportunities doing play by play in the NHL with the Hawks because they were I'll let you tell them, but pretty unique.
Yeah, yeah. By unique if you mean being told in the middle of the second period that you're calling the game because the main guy's voice is a little bit shot. Yeah, that was quite another baptism into the hockey broadcasting world. Yeah, I mean, I had covered the Hawks at some capacity. I was reporting, and then I was podcasting, and then eventually there was some movement at the pre and post position, and I had been covering the team. I had done all the other responsibilities, and it was kind of just a smooth transition for me to fall into that role. And man, it was awesome. I mean, the Hawks are the team I grew up watching. For the longest time, it was really the only hockey I watched. I mean, the Hawks weren't on TV when I was a kid, and they got good in 2007, 2008. They were back on TV. That's when I got immersed into hockey. I mean, that's a big difference between Chicago and Pittsburgh. Is great of a hockey town Chicago is, Pittsburgh knows their hockey, man, and the fans know it to a T, and they're very passionate, and they know all the little ins and outs of the game. So I feel like I've had to really catch up in terms of learning the game, understanding the flows of it all. Because all I really knew was just the Blackhawks. I mean, I loved the game. I loved what I was watching, but it was a lot of because how good the Hawks were at the time. So when I was doing pre and post, I had play by play aspirations, but I had no hockey tape to show anyone. I had done every other sport, but all my background in hockey was just behind the scenes. I was producing, I was editing, I was hosting pre and post. So I started calling games in the back room of my condo in Chicago. Would just put the game on mute, call the game, critique it afterwards. Then there was an opportunity to help out in Rockford. So I would go down to Rockford, Illinois, about a 2 hour drive. I would call, I would parachute in, call a game, drive back home. I did about 9 or 10. And then as I'm doing pre and post for the Blackhawks, one day, John Weideman was under the weather. His voice was okay at the beginning of the game, and then it started to go downhill throughout the game. And they said, "We're pulling you out of the bullpen. You're taking over." And the Hawks played the Tampa Bay Lightning that night, but they pretty much played Victor Hedman, Steven Stamkos, Brandon Hagel, and that was it. No other player was identified other than those three jumping into that game. So that was that was my first NHL broadcast. Pretty wild, pretty crazy. Obviously, didn't love how I performed, but allowed myself the grace to say, okay, I can get past this because it was quite a unique circumstance. I was then told the next day I was going to do the following game, which was against the Arizona Coyotes, RIP. Chris Chelios was my color commentator. So that
Wow.
was quite the first full game I got to do. Pretty cool. And then eventually one game turned into about 9 with the Blackhawks. Felt good about them, had a lot of fun with them. And I mean, hey, it was my childhood team. So it was really special to do that. That's where I got my first game at the United Center in that chair. And then, the following summer, this job opens up. I knew you. That was about it. Just tried to reach out as many other people as I could and toss my tape around, and the stars aligned, and that's how I landed here. But yeah, it was quite an adjustment. It was learning on the fly a lot. But once those games in Rockford just really helped me because it allowed me to get comfortable learning the game. I could make some mistakes. The thing I would do is I would, on the drive back, it was a 2 hour drive. I would only listen to the third period. I wouldn't critique myself on the first or second because I was so new to it. I was like, okay, I'll only judge myself at the most experienced part that I've been to, and that's the third period of a hockey game. So, gained some confidence that way, and it and ended up working out.
Success is when preparation meets opportunity, right? That's one of my favorite quotes, Joe.
Yeah.
But with that, hey, you mentioned Chelios, and I wanted to ask you about him because growing up in Michigan, obviously he was always on my TV. So let's hear about him. I mean, what kind of guy was he? What was it like to work with him? I'd love to hear that from you.
He's great. He's great. I think I got to know more about him. I hosted a show with him one day when I was doing pre and post, and we did a remote broadcast. He was signing autographs, obviously, but I got an hour to just sit down and talk with him. Chicago guy through and through, but man, he's got some heavy roots in Detroit, and I know how the Michiganders feel about him, and rightly so. I mean, winning cups there is obviously going to give you that recognition. But it's just pretty cool because he's from my hometown too, the south side of Chicago. We've got some mutual family friends. Just a down to earth guy. Pretty much has time for everyone. Likes to have a good time, but as everyone knows the stories, he burns the candle at both ends. Like, sure, he'd be the last one out the night before, but he'd be the first guy at practice the next day, and he'd beat everyone in a bag skate. So I've always appreciated that mentality from him, and just has always wanted to succeed and be the best wherever he went. And I think one of the coolest things I got to cover was his number retirement. Not only was that just a party in itself, I mean, Kid Rock was there, Cindy
Wow.
Crawford, Dennis Rodman, all at the United Center. It was amazing. It was like, the Emmys at the United Center. And oh, by the way, it was Patrick Kane's first game back to the United Center as a Detroit Red Wing against Connor Bedard. And in Chris Chelios' speech, he says, "Don't show me up today, Kaner." And what does Patrick Kane do? He scores the game-winning goal in overtime with a
Oh, that's
pass from
right.
Alex DeBrincat. So yeah, quite the chapter in the Blackhawks Red Wings rivalry. But just yeah, like I said, a hometown guy. It all of the cool accolades it was for me to call my first game in Chicago at the United Center for my hometown team. And oh yeah, one of the local legends is going to be sitting shotgun with you during the broadcast was the cherry on top as well.
That's awesome. You go from Original Six here to Pittsburgh, which is, the next shade of teams that came into the National Hockey League in 67. But I'm curious, you grew up in Chicago, you follow the Hawks, like you said, you've been immersed with them. What's different or what's the same about an original six team coming to I hesitate to call expansion because that puts a different connotation when you got teams like Seattle and Vegas moving into the picture recently, but a non-original six team and one with traditions, but not of those Boston's, Montreal's, Chicago's, Detroit's, Toronto's, Ranger type teams.
Yeah, I it's tough because again, like growing up when I was much younger, I mean, the Hawks were kind of far out there, right? They weren't on TV, they weren't good.
Mhm.
I was honestly going to more Chicago Wolves games as a kid. Who, if people
Wow.
don't know, I mean, that's an AHL team, but Boy Scouts got free tickets. Firemen got free tickets. I was a Boy Scout and my dad was a fireman, so I was going to more Chicago Wolves games, and then I mean, I'll never forget. It was probably the most significant sports Christmas present I ever got. Christmas Eve, 2008. We opened presents early, not my decision, my parents. And I open it up, and it's a Red Hawk sweater, Marty Havlat. And my dad's like, because we were big baseball fans. It was tough being a baseball fan in Chicago in those days as well. But he said, "We're going to watch the Hawks now. They're good. They got a bunch of these young kids. They're on the rise." And I'm like, okay. And my dad was always kind of passionate with that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, Dad. But he was right. He was spot on. So I quickly fell in love with it. But like I said earlier, that's kind of all I knew was the Hawks from 2008 to current times. The Pittsburgh Penguins have this just stoicism about them. They've got this franchise that I know they haven't been winners in their entire existence, but for a lot of the people out there, their whole lives, the Penguins have been a winner and a heavy winner and just this prestige to them. And the transition from Lemieux to Crosby is something I'm still trying to fathom. And kind of back to your question earlier, Josh. I mean, it's a great time to be on social media these days because I get so much Penguins history just thrown in my face, because people like to talk about the '90s. They like to talk about the Cup years with the Crosby runs. And I mean, I just recently saw a pretty well done video about what Crosby is doing right now. And I know we say it all the time, right? 38 years old, turning back the clock, putting up points per game. But they just showed this graph, this curve of the average NHL player peaking at 27, maybe 29, and then just dipping off. And you think about it, it's like, yeah, no, of course. And oh my gosh, Sidney Crosby is reaching 40 and he's still doing what he's doing. So it's always a good reality check to kind of put that into perspective. And it's just so cool that both guys landed here and love it here and are just I mean, Sid is just so attached to the Penguins' history and the Penguins' success. And it's amazing that someone is putting up an argument against Mario Lemieux for that because of everything that Mario's done. I mean, it's just really cool. It's also fun to see the arguments and the conversations with the best player ever. And I know that hits home here, but they show all the games played by Gretzky. They show all the games played for the top 20 points producers in the NHL. And with Lemieux there in the middle, you just see one less digit in terms of games played. And I just think that says so much. And it's so easy to get overlooked. Obviously, the people in Pittsburgh don't overlook it. But then you talk to people around the game, you talk to other broadcasters, and even they say, man, like Lemieux is so underrated. Like he still isn't getting the amount of flowers he should be getting. And the guy's like responsible for 5 cups, and he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's done all these things. So it's pretty cool. Again, I'm just really lucky, and what a fan base, what a passionate fan base, and again, just so tuned into the history and the right amount of appreciation that the organization deserves, I think.
Joe, what was your first impression of Crosby? You obviously watched him growing up, heard all these things about him, but finally got to get to know him actually all last year. What was your first impression?
I don't want to say this you know too much in jest, but like almost perfect, if not perfect, right? Like we know what he does on the ice, but he's just that charismatic, happy, easygoing guy,
Mhm.
but then flips a switch during the games, but also knows the right thing to say at the right time with everyone involved, whether it's a media scrum or a meet and greet with the fans. I mean, I'm sure so many fans have stories about a picture that they've taken with the guy or an autograph that they've gotten signed. And there's still a little extra Sid touch to it where, he just makes a nice remark about your hat or your jersey or just the right thing to say. And I mean, how many times you guys can all agree that we see him stop the bus to sign one extra autograph or
Mhm.
get off the bus to sign one extra autograph. He's just always thinking about the fans. And, from an outside perspective, he's a great player, he's a great guy. But when you see how he operates on a daily basis, just always doing the right thing, always wanting to get better, always really in tune with what's going on, too. I think that's just what makes him such a great leader because he doesn't leave anybody out. He keeps everyone on his mind to get to where he wants to go. He wants to bring the team, he wants to bring the organization. And again, he's doing it longer than anyone else has ever done it. I think it's tough to quantify how valuable that is. And I brought this up before too, covering the Hawks as they went through a rebuild. They decided to move on from Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane. And this is all apples and oranges. I'm not saying this is the same type of conversation or circumstance, but I've realized now how much value there is to have a guy like Sidney Crosby in the dressing room, no matter where you are in the standings, because every player that you bring in, pretty much for their NHL debut, or even if it's just during training camp or preseason, they're going to gain something from him. And even if the Penguins lose that game, they're going to gain something from Sid. They're probably going to catch a little extra drive knowing that they're playing with that guy because he doesn't like to
Mhm.
lose. And if he's giving it his all, no matter where the team's at, I got to make sure I'm giving it my all. Again, Sid is one in a million, right? It's not like every captain of every team can be that guy, can be that person, but I understand why the Penguins hold so much value to um keeping this guy on the roster. And again, this is aside from everything the Penguins have done this year, because clearly they're in a playoff spot right now. Everyone's having a blast with what's going on. But these conversations weren't what we were talking about a few months ago. So I think you got to commend Kyle Dubas and Dan Muse and everyone involved to realize how important it is to have Sidney Crosby still on this roster, and it's clearly paid off.
You just said they're in a playoff spot, Joe. I'm gonna just be honest with you. I've allowed my mind to wander and think about what it'd be, how much fun it would be to call a playoff series. I mean, you just started here last year, but you haven't called one in your career. I haven't seen the playoffs in Pittsburgh in 3 years. Have you allowed your mind to wander and wonder what that would be like to get there in the booth at PPG Paints Arena and see a playoff game for real with the Penguins?
I think I did the first week of last season. I mean, with how passionate the fan base is and how into the game they are, I'm like, man, this isn't even a playoff game, and this is how these guys are reacting. Oh yeah, no, I so want to get there. I have been daydreaming about it. I've been envisioning it, just to get a taste of it. Because again, I keep getting all these videos, these montage videos, these highlight packages thrown in my face on social media. I hear
Right.
you guys talking about the glory days with all the cup runs and everything, and it's just like, oh, I'm just kind of a fly on the wall observing it all. And yeah, I'd love to experience that for the first time. I really want to. I also just I would look forward to the challenge of that. It was the game against Tampa earlier this year down in Florida where it's like, wow, we haven't played the Lightning in a while. I forgot how fast they are. I forgot how
Yeah.
powerful they are. I forgot how quick the game is. I'm like, this
Mhm.
is probably what it's like to call a playoff game. Again, the Penguins won that game. I'm eager for that challenge. I'm eager for that experience to where, you know, of course, every game is you want to win every game. Of course, every game is we can only do and control what we can control. But I just envision that experience being nothing but, my God, let's score a goal in the next 5 minutes. My goodness, let's prevent a goal in the next 5 minutes. Just being so present for that moment. So yeah, no, I'm totally daydreaming about that. Probably a little bit more than I should.
It's another level,
That's
isn't it? I
always good.
haven't covered up NHL playoffs yet either, so I'm like really hoping they can pull it off. Fingers crossed, that's for sure. Hey, I want to do
We'll have to
something fun
compare
with you.
notes once we get there.
Hey, that's yeah, that's true. That's true. Sounds like a plan to me, Joe. I want to do something fun with you guys. People, I'm sure they ask you too, like what your game day routine is like from when you wake up to when you get to the rink to when you go to bed. Just I actually created an Instagram reel not too long ago trying to show all of that, which is actually way harder than it looks because while you're doing things, you forget to actually record yourself. But just take us through like what a game day routine is like for you, like what you do when you wake up, kind of how you get ready mentally for the game.
Yeah, I mean that's the cool part about this job is you can stick to a routine, but every day is going to be different, and I think
Sure.
that's what I like about the job so much. But I mean, it's hockey, right? You got to have a routine, whether it's superstition or not. It just I think it helps you get through the daily base, the daily grind of it all. But I mean, morning skate, right? Get on the bus, go watch morning skate. Sometimes it's just the Penguins, sometimes it's both teams. Try to pick up any little nuggets that you can from the coaching staffs, from the players, from the other team's broadcasters, the other team's reporters. Then you come back and you try to wind down a little bit, maybe a little lunch, continue on the game notes that, are just kind of chipped away at a little bit every day. Josh knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then kind of allow yourself to breathe, to take in, all right, there's still a game coming up. Let's try to make sure we are attached to that moment, not worry too much about getting to that moment. um, Try to arrive to the arena a few hours before, whether it's at home or on the road. I mean, I know it's just kind of mundane stuff, but I like to eat not too close to the broadcast, but I like to eat a little something, so I've got some energy, but I'm not weighed down either. Try to drink tea in between the periods. That's where I'm at pretty much every intermission, just to
Not
try to
coffee?
keep the throat. Coffee before, but coffee kind of dries me out. So I try to stay hydrated with tea. Somebody just talked me into chewing gum in the intermissions. Apparently that helps your throat. That helps your vocal cords, stay loose. Yeah, so I've been doing that, and yeah, just like I said earlier, try to stay in the moment. Try to keep things in check in terms of milestones that are approaching, statistics that might be relevant, but not get weighed down too number heavy, to make sure you're still on top of the action, and just try to feel the flow of the game. Right. I think if you try to force too many things in the broadcast, it can alter the flow of the game, the rhythm of it. I always just try to make sure my excitement is matching exactly what's going on the ice. I'm not going to, overexcite things if they don't need to be overexcited, but I'm also not going to dull things down if it's a very tense moment. I want to make
Yeah.
sure I bring the game to the fan as best as I can. And I think, yeah, all those little steps leading up to it help out that way.
Do the front desk people like Josh ever stress you out when you're trying to get your game boards printed in time to get to the bus?
That's Dan who
That,
gets
that
stressed by
that's
that.
that's
I
true.
just remember when we were
We
in
need to.
Europe, people in Europe take their time, and I think Josh had asked for them, and then it was like a half hour later, and he's just
Oh
thinking
yeah,
like,
the Swedes were they
"Are
got them to me. I just should have ordered the print job 3 days before the game, and then I would have had them in time for puck drop.
Which is totally easy for us to do, right? To game prep 3 days before the game.
Yeah,
There's
of
there's
course,
nothing that's going to
absolutely.
change or anything like that. Yeah, no, that is funny. That's a hurdle that I think a lot of people don't realize. But it's funny. I was dealing with that when I would call high school and college games. I used to have a routine where I'd go to this one FedEx before I got to UIC to call a college basketball game because that was the closest to the game that I could print it out. And I finally figured it out to how I could get in and get out of there in less than like 3 minutes, and it would cost me less than $2 because I didn't have to ask for anyone's help. The only thing that could slow me down is a line behind the printer. But yeah, those throw you some curveballs sometimes because we stay at different hotels in different cities. If there's not a FedEx, a UPS store, or a Kinko's nearby, you got to use the hotel. Sometimes the hotel is a great help. Sometimes they have no idea what they're doing. But these are quirky requests that we're getting because they're just longer sheets of paper, needed
Yep.
in color, need just one sheet, needed in a timely fashion. It's not an everyday task that they're dealt with. So you try to work around that too. I've told Josh I didn't get my game notes printed on opening night at Madison Square Garden, and it was about an hour before puck drop. I realized it wasn't going to happen, and I'm like, you know what? What am I going to do? Like, I still got to call the game. They're not going to not drop the puck because Joe doesn't have his game charts. So just had to work them off my computer, which is a little bit more complicated, but it all worked out okay. The Penguins won 3-0.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I will say is I've always said this to people, like if UPS is listening, FedEx is listening, if they started like a rewards printing program, you and I would be gold star members. So if they do want to, if they want to start something up, we could be the inaugural people. I'm sure they could find probably every play-by-play guy in the National Hockey League, with the exception of what John Forsland handwrites his notes. I think everyone else is printing
Yeah,
something out that they do. So they'd have a lot of takers.
that's
handwriting
true.
all
We
those
get free
notes?"
shipping for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, exactly. I would buy into that. Are you kidding me?
I love that. Well, Joe, thanks so much for coming on. Speaking of notes, I know you got to do some game prep ahead of this game in Buffalo. Big 2 points on the line. So great to catch up with you. Hopefully, the Penguins can close out everything strong before the Olympic break. The NHL is coming back to the Olympics, and hope to have you on again soon sometime. Thank you.
Hey, always a pleasure with you guys. Having a blast, and you guys are a big reason of that. And yeah, let's get one more before the break.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joey.
All right, time for some cup convos and a little trivia as we celebrate the Penguins' 10th year anniversary of their 2016 Cup win. This week in Penguins history, a guy named Sidney Crosby tallied his 900th career point in a 3-point game against the Florida Panthers. We thought that was a lot. Well, now he's got 1,746, becoming the Penguins' all-time points leader this season in December. Some emotion too, as the captain last Saturday during the Penguins' 10-year reunion ceremony on the ice, seeing some tears from him. Josh, what do you make of that? And just what does that say about his desire to continue to make memories in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I thought it was a rare letdown of his guard, right? Like he's so stoic all the time in big games, wins, losses, even when he meets with the media, he just kind of has a similar demeanor and a similar way that he carries himself. But honestly, that was great. Like we always talk about, oh, I wish hockey players were more like let their personality show more, let themselves be more human. And crying over a video isn't exactly showing your personality, but it does let him show himself be I think a lot more, or look a lot more just like a regular member of that team that is looking back on a fond memory, and it brings back a lot of happy emotion for him. And he actually Colby Armstrong shared this on our broadcast the other night, that he talked to Sid about that, and the big reason Sid told him why he was crying was because he looked down that line and it's just him, Gino, and Letang that are still playing of that group. Now, granted, there were a couple guys that are still in the league like Dumoulin and Matt Murray that weren't there. But just looking down the line, there's not many. And I think it really hit him just how fast things change in that league, despite having it doesn't feel like that long ago, but in the span of 10 years, how much everything has shifted for the team. And I think it was pretty emotional for him. But
Yeah.
man, if it didn't hammer home the idea that that guy loves being a Penguin and loves being a part of the fabric here, I don't know what else he needs to show people.
I liked how he joked after the next day, or actually post game that night. He was talking about how, I don't watch YouTube videos of this stuff all the time. Like, it's not like I sit at home and watch all these memories. So I'm sure, like, when you watch that for the first time in a while, it really hits home. But as you said, like, people got to remember it's more than just the game on the ice itself. It's so much more than that. It's the memories. That's his life, right? Those are his friendships, guys that he was with every single day and now doesn't get to see every day anymore. So not surprised by that at all. I love the human element of that. But with that, second all time in the NHL right now in points behind Gretzky, we were just talking about him, Jaromir Jagr, 1,921, which means Sid is 175 points away from that. I did not just do that math right there. I did that ahead of time. That would have been crazy, but needs a couple of upper 80 point seasons basically, and he'll pass it. He's had 90 point seasons the last 3 years. What do you think? Can he do it?
I mean, he's had what? This is 21 years and he's had 20 straight point per game seasons. So you figure the games are going up after this year, Hales. It's 84 games next year. So if he hits
Yeah.
84 a couple years in a row, then he's flirting with that number. And I think, listen, if anybody's going to play, like Joe talked about it in his interview, if anybody's going to play and you have the expectation that you're going to continue to expect them to play at this level, Sidney Crosby's probably the only guy that you can consider. He's kind of everyone calls him the Tom Brady of hockey, but he kind of is creeping into that territory because he's going to be close to 40 and still performing as a top 5 player in this league, which is just remarkable. So I'd say never. And until he decides it's his last year or his last game, I think any number is on the table for this guy.
Well, I'm in my 30s, and pretty soon before I know it, I'll be in my upper 30s like Sid. And I just got to remind myself that anything is possible, right? You are not, because that's what the GOAT is showing us right now. Oh, well, a couple of big points, right? In Buffalo coming up here. I know Josh and I are really looking forward to watching all the hockey during the Olympic break as well. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you on Get Me the Brandy next time.